So I wanted to touch on that for just a minute because I think sometimes we may forget that not only do we owe an obligation of civility to the court and to opposing counsel and opposing parties, we really owe a duty of civility to each other. And incivility in the workplace can be a real problem. This is a list that I found in doing some research on civility in the workplace, and it's just some things to keep in mind. One of the things that I really want to stress is take responsibility. Take responsibility for what you do. Don't try to blame somebody else. And finally, and I think I'm going to end up right on time, I did it. I'm going to leave you with the 10 commandments of civility. First of all, thou shalt not lie. Play nice in the sandbox. Don't bite the hand that feeds you, and that includes your clients. It includes judges, and it, I would argue, includes members of the public who, keep in mind, pay our salaries. Pick your battles. You don't have to go to the mat on every little issue. What goes around comes around. I think this can provide you with some solace when you're dealing with a really obnoxious opposing counsel, because it may be really unpleasant, but eventually it will catch up with them. And I think that Brendan and George will talk about what happens when you engage in bad behavior in the courtroom. What goes around will come around to bite you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is the golden rule. I had that slide earlier that said that civility is essentially the golden rule. Raise your aspirations and lower your expectations. Don't stoop to the level of your opposing counsel. Let the hot ones cool. This is when you're in a heated dispute. Slow things down. You don't need to respond right away. You may want to write it out, sit on it for a while before you respond, and then oftentimes you will think better of your initial reaction. Don't take things personally. I think the clip that I showed from the Maricopa County Superior Court highlights that. These two lawyers really had a personal issue with each other. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. And the end. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to either ask them now, we have a couple minutes, or come up afterwards if you have any questions.
Any questions?
We have one.
In the video, you had someone who was being deposed, and it seemed that his attorney was behaving very badly. What could that individual do to try and make someone aware of that lawyer's behavior?
In that particular case, this fellow was just a witness. He was not the party. So it wasn't necessarily his attorney, but I think he was the witness for that attorney's client. So I don't know that he really could have done anything to control the lawyer. If the lawyer's client was in the room, I think it would have been a good idea for that client to say, let's take a break, and go out and say, hey, you are really causing this deposition to go on much longer than it needs to be, and you need to tone it down, and I don't appreciate your behavior, and let's just move on. I mean, this is a video deposition. Until I saw this clip and the one that I didn't show, I used to tell people, if you're dealing with a particularly obnoxious opposing counsel, or perhaps witness or client or opposing party, you might want to think about videotaping the deposition, because that generally makes people tone things down. If this was toned down, I hate to think what that guy was like if it wasn't being videotaped. But in this particular instance, I don't think that witness really, as the person pointed out, he didn't have a dog in that show. It wasn't his lawyer. Neither lawyer was his lawyer, but I think the client certainly could have said, wait a minute, this is costing us a fortune. Let's move on. Or the opposing counsel could have called the court. I mean, sometimes you have to do that, to get things moving. Anybody else? Did you guys have anything you wanted to add? Okay, well then let's get the other PowerPoint up and running.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Jo. Thank you.
Probably one of the most valuable thing in Mary Jo's presentation was the checklist, the top 10 tips for civility. in the way that we treat each other. Everybody, when you have a chance, if you need some bedtime reading or you're having trouble sleeping tonight, look at that checklist. We're all imperfect. We're all impatient. We all sometimes act in a way that's not very civil towards one another. I'm the first one that I have a ton of things that I've got to get done and people screaming at me, and so I sometimes get impatient and I'm not very civil. And so here's my apology to each and every one of you who I've been civil with. But take a look at it, think about it, and just go through that checklist and see how you might be able, once a day, to do something that reflects conduct on that checklist. And now we're going to go to one of the most civil people I know, Mr. Dave Cookson from the great state of Nebraska. And Dave, take it away.
Thanks, Al. Before I get into the presentation, I want to give you a little of the context of why this is so important and why we at part of the NAGTRE training faculty really want to do this. You might want to dim the lights a little bit. Okay, I thought this was on. Can you hear it now?
That's only attached to the camera.
Ah, that is no fair. All right, we'll see if I can walk and chew gum better than Mary Jo. The problem here is I'm like a televangelist and I like to move. And so this is going to limit my ability to move back and forth.
Try this one. This one is bigger.
Is it on?
That's, yeah, it should be.
How's that?
You got to press the button. On the side.
This one?
Yeah,
Here.
there's a, here. There you go.
See, we can get Al to do anything. But what the context I wanted to give you is, unfortunately, for all of us, 45 of the 50 AGs in this country are elected by the citizens of their state, which means we not only get to be lawyers, but we have to work for politicians. And so it brings another part of, another complication, if you will, another factor into how we act as attorneys. Now, the good news is that for many years, the Attorney General's office was not viewed in most states as a highly politicized office. And then a few of the AGs decided they could sue the big tobacco companies, dollars, and all of a sudden everybody started viewing the AGs as political offices. And now our National Association of Attorneys General is lovingly referred to as the National Association of Aspiring Governors. And so what happens when you throw politics into this arena is a lot of you who probably didn't sign up for the political part get drug into it anyway. And especially now. Al and I started as chief deputies together. We came to our first orientation. Al was replacing Stuart Bluestone, who's highly respected, kind of a guru, a go-to guy among the AGs, and Al's done a very nice job of following Stuart. I followed a guy named Matt McNair, who was kind of viewed as the John Belushi of the chief deputies, and I'm doing a pretty decent job of keeping up with Matt. But one thing that we learned is I come from a Republican administration. Obviously, Gary is a Democrat, and I don't know what Al's politics are. I'm a registered independent, but I work for a Republican. And unfortunately, I work for a Republican who decided to run for the United States Senate twice, once against an incumbent Republican. That was the fourth day on my job as chief deputy. And the second time, this last go-round, against a Democrat who ultimately got out. So I'm kind of, unfortunately, had the experience of living the extremes of political life in the AG's office. And so what I want to talk to you today about is what it is to be civil in what seems like a civil war.